In this video, I'm going to react to the US military's plan to defeat an alien invasion. Hi guys, and welcome to another episode of Kabir Considers. This is the place where I react to music, media, sports, anime, anything related to popular culture. I'll watch it with an open mind and give you my 100% honest reaction to it. And if you could please hit that like button early, I'd really appreciate it. Now, this is a very interesting scenario indeed, because on the face of it, I would assume that we would have no chance, because for an alien civilization to be able to make it, to us, through interstellar travel, they have technology that is far more advanced than ours. We're still trying to get human beings to Mars, the closest planet to us. So for a civilization to travel from another galaxy potentially, I mean, they are way beyond us. However, I mean, if it's a scenario where the civilization that comes here is of a fairly similar level of technology, who knows? Perhaps the US military has some secret weapons up its sleeve. But to be honest, I still don't see how we come out on top. So let's go. This is going to be me reacting to how the US military plans to defeat an alien invasion. Let's do it.
The first attack was an EMP blast that covered nearly the whole of North America, plunging the world's sole superpower into the darkness of the late Industrial Revolution. Power systems across the US were immediately knocked out, and nearly every community in the nation was plunged into darkness. A few special places, mostly military
This would be terrible.
facilities, managed to either avoid the worst of the EMP blast through a quirk of the terrain or were hardened against it. Civilian planes dropped out of the sky, their onboard electronics completely fried. Military jets, however, continued to be operational, as were the US's large fleet of ground combat vehicles, all of which had been designed for a war on a nuclear battlefield against the Soviet Union or Russia. High up in the atmosphere, the EMP blast simply wasn't close enough to destroy the electronics on their shielded hardware. The US had had a few weeks to prepare though, and almost immediately engineering crews moved into position to fix what power systems they could, restoring the entire national grid.
Yeah, because I would assume that we would surely notice if there was an interstellar craft or just an alien craft heading towards this planet. All of our observatories surely would have picked something up in advance.
Would take years, so their efforts were focused on critical civilian and military infrastructure. Even then, it would be weeks at minimum before power could be restored to even a tiny fraction of the US. The alien spacecraft had been observed a little over a month and a half ago, first drawing the curiosity of astronomers using computers to search the night sky. The computers noticed the tiny dip in starlight as the giant craft crossed space and blocked out stars behind it. And soon, deep space reconnaissance radar was turned onto the phenomenon, confirming that a solid object was indeed on an intercept course with Earth. Any doubts on the
Imagine being the person to discover that.
object's true nature were squashed a few days later when the object began decelerating from its current speed at 5% the speed of light. Now, with the object parked in high orbit over the Earth, the President of the United States, along with the Joint Chiefs and his top advisors, discussed their strategy for repelling a hostile invasion of the Earth by an alien species. The first to speak is the Chief Science Advisor, confirming that the EMP pulse was an expected first strike option against the United States, which as the world's sole superpower was the likeliest target to be struck first. The advisor then pulls up images of the object made by combining direct visual.
But in this scenario, how would the alien craft, how would the people know that the US was the sole superpower of Earth? It couldn't be just based on geographical size, because there's Russia that's bigger than the US, I believe. So how would they determine that?
Observation from ground telescopes and radar telemetry, revealing a long cylinder shape with a giant, almost mushroom-style dome at the front. The advisor points at the dome. This is good news, he says, because this is exactly how we would cross space at very high speeds. The Joint Chiefs are confused. How exactly is this strange feature of the spacecraft good news? The advisor clears his throat and explains, reaching velocities of a few percentage points of the speed of light is something well within our grasp today. But the biggest problem is shielding a spacecraft from debris and counter...
Are we capable of that? Reaching speeds of some of the speed of light? I wouldn't think we're capable of that yet.
In space. At such incredibly high speeds, a pebble can strike a spacecraft with the force of hundreds of tons of TNT. And while debris is extremely rare in the vacuum of space, it is not non-existent. Therefore, a large shield at the front of a large thin spacecraft is the best way to shield your vehicle. And because this is how we would do it, the advisor explains, then this means that our alien invaders' technology cannot be too far ahead of our own. We have a fighting chance. The men and women who will decide the fate of the United States and possibly the Earth all look around the room at each other. A chance, any chance, is more than they'd hoped for. The advisor once more clears his throat. Because their technology isn't too far advanced from ours and they obviously want our planet intact, since they're reluctant to simply drop asteroids on our head from orbit, then I have a plan to win this war. Let me explain. A day after the EMP blast, ground-based radar confirms activity along the main body of the spacecraft. Several components are detaching from it and breaking up into smaller objects, transport craft of some...
This is reminding me of Independence Day.
Some sort. Some, though, are obviously combat craft, as these move to new orbits. The US military, however, has already guessed what the aliens might do next, and they're ready. From several hundred miles up, metal rods half the size of telephone poles rain down on military installations across the US. The rods pack no explosives, instead relying on the kinetic energy of their fall from space to deliver devastation on the scale of mankind's largest non-nuclear weapons. Military airfields, hangars, command and control nodes, supply depots, metal rods rain down on these and other strategic targets, completely obliterating them. But the US was ready, and following protocols established long ago for a nuclear war, had already widely dispersed its personnel and equipment. Many military aircraft and ground combat vehicles are destroyed in the attack, but many more survive, widely dispersed into the surrounding areas and on the thousands of civilian and makeshift airfields all across the US. As the attack takes place, the president and his advisors secure in an underground bunker over...
Yeah, this is to be expected. Surely, you know, the president, other heads of state, other key decision makers would be quickly evacuated, quickly secured.
For a mile deep, monitor the situation through dozens of redundant command and control networks. The US's plans for a nuclear showdown with the Soviet Union have created one of the most resilient nations on Earth. The science advisor predicted this attack and works to reassure his fellow colleagues. Because the aliens aren't too far advanced from us, he explains, they have many of the same limitations in space travel that we do, even if they are much better at dealing with them than us. The economy of space travel makes moving large amounts of equipment, like an invasion fleet, extremely expensive, so the aliens are dealing with very limited assets. Our plan for victory is to simply bleed the aliens dry, making an invasion of our nation so expensive in terms of manpower and resources that the aliens are unable to continue the fight, or it simply isn't worth it anymore.
That's a good point, because you know, the aliens would be limited by what the storage capacity of their craft, whereas, you know, we've got the whole planet. We could probably just, you know, if it came down to attrition, like a war of attrition, if we're of similar technological levels, we would surely win, because we would have more resources to throw at them.
The plan is solid. After all, the aliens have had to bring everything to invade our world with them, including their troops, while we here on Earth can regenerate every soldier killed on the spot. The war will be of one long, ongoing resistance. The aliens may be limited in resources due to having to ferry them across interstellar space, but they're still much superior to our own forces. The US military thus makes the best use of its assets in the short time that it'll still be able to before they're inevitably destroyed. Within hours of the Kinetic strikes, the troop transports and combat aircraft begin to enter the atmosphere. Here, with their sensors blinded by the incredible heat of re-entry, is humanity's best chance at striking with all available air and missile forces. All across the world, combat aircraft and air defense batteries move into action. Over the skies of the US, squadrons of F-22s, F-35s, F-16s.
That would be so cool to observe. All those F-22s, you know, B-2s, F-16s, just, you know, massive, you know, amounts of them just flying in unison towards like one target. It would be very cool to see.
and every other plane capable of taking on an interceptor role move in to intercept the incoming alien spacecraft. Heat-guided ground-based interceptors fire in large volleys, guided to their targets by the unmistakable heat signature of the alien spacecraft entering the Earth's atmosphere. The combat aircraft is next, firing radar and heat-guided missiles in rapid succession at swarms of alien craft screaming through the atmosphere. The president had considered using nuclear weapons, but was talked down by his advisors. The aliens had yet to use weapons of mass destruction, and using a nuke may well be an invitation to a type of war the Earth couldn't hope to win. Conventional weapons are having a spectacular effect on the incoming alien craft, though, and cheers erupt in the president's secure facility as the reports trickle in from all over the U.S. Moving at such high speeds, the superior alien craft simply can't avoid the incoming volleys, or they'd risk tearing themselves apart. And despite whatever type of propulsion or radar absorbent materials they may be using, the signature of incoming spacecraft at high speeds moving through the atmosphere is almost too easy a target for Earth's weapons. The victory, however, is extremely short-lived. America's combat pilots were warned to immediately break off their attacks once the spacecraft punched through the atmosphere, but for many it's still too late. Now within the atmosphere, the alien combat aircraft easily outmaneuver and outrun even America's best fighter craft. The casualties are in the hundreds within minutes. Next, the combat aircraft strike at air defense batteries all over the US, easily destroying any they encounter and calling in orbital strikes on those they can't reach. More metal rods from space obliterate air defense batteries across America, though their crews are long gone. The aliens now rule not just space, but the skies too. With alien transports discouraging combat troops by the thousands, America's ground response is mostly infantry-based. With space firmly in the aliens' grasp, more kinetic strikes would easily obliterate large formations of armored vehicles. For the first time in modern history, the United States doesn't rule the skies and has to fight much in the same way its adversaries have. In some places, though, commanders are able to maneuver combat vehicles to within very close range of the enemy. Hugging the enemy, so to speak, forces the aliens to not use kinetic strikes for fear of hitting their own troops. Forced to ferry all of their invasion equipment from space, the alien forces are fielding very few combat vehicles of their own, despite their infantry weapons being superior to man's. Without combat vehicles, American Abrams...
And to be honest, this video assumes that the aliens want to, like take Earth, or take Earth in a kind of almost not humane, but because I mean, they could just surely attack the Earth from space, just launch a lot of, suborbital weapons, or not suborbital, but, like from orbit. Like, would they even need to leave their ship? They just blast us from above.
Tanks and M2 Bradleys decimate alien forces when they encounter them. No matter their level of technology, even aliens must obey the laws of physics. And despite their advanced construction, the anti-tank silver bullet rounds of an Abrams or lethal missiles of a Bradley are extremely effective against the alien vehicles. Once more, though, victories are short-lived, as alien air forces who now have uncontested dominance of the sky do the job of close air support that orbital kinetic strikes simply can't do. The aliens' numbers build by the day, and by the end of the week, they've disgorged several million troops on US soil. Then the shuttle flights slow down considerably, with the ability to only bring a limited number of troops and equipment across the vast distances of space. The aliens have clearly disgorged nearly all of their combat assets. Their advanced technology will make up the shortfall in personnel, or at least that was the plan. The aliens hail from a planet 100 light-years from Earth, making their observations of our planet 100 years old. And their invasion plans are based on fighting a civilization whose planet exhibited the techno-signature of a late industrial age civilization.
Oh, this is the thing about, space and relativity that I struggle to get my head around. So because we're that far away, the light that they see from us is 100 years old. That's mad.
Then, moving at 5% the speed of light, it took the invasion fleet another 20 years to arrive. That means the best knowledge the aliens had on Earth's level of technology was based on distant observations of the Earth in the year 1900, when the most advanced techno-signature detectable was weak radio transmissions. Now they face humanity armed with automatic machine guns, man-portable anti-tank missiles, electronic warfare suites, and extremely stealthy combat drones. The war of occupation is indeed costly, but the technological disparity still favors the aliens. To offset their lack of manpower, the aliens turn to manufacturing combat drones of their own, who can quickly self-replicate and overwhelm human forces. Within a week, the conventional war is over, and the US military is roundly defeated, unable to fight any longer. This is when Phase 2 of the US's victory plan over the aliens takes effect. Seasoned combat troops are ordered to disperse widely into the countryside, taking with them as much military equipment as they can carry. American Special Forces operatives are amongst those ordered to flee for the wilderness or the ruins of cities, and there they link up with other military personnel and civilian survivors.
And to be honest, you know, where like the international community we're not going to just stand by and let the US, you know, get obliterated. That just isn't going to happen. I mean, the UK we'd be there instantly. You know, Australia, France, everybody would be there. Everybody. You know, you wouldn't have to fight this by yourselves, that's for sure.
Special Forces operators initiate Phase 2 and begin training surviving combat troops and civilians in the art of resistance. American forces are taught to hide from and fight a technologically superior enemy the same way that the Taliban and the Viet Cong resisted US might. A guerrilla war begins overnight, with American survivors striking at alien supply depots and personnel barracks. The goal is simple: destroy as much equipment as possible and kill as many aliens as possible so that the invasion becomes too costly in terms of lives and finances to continue. The guerrilla resistance lasts for years, despite horrific losses incurred by the human survivors. Yet humanity can quickly replace its losses, though it does mean that the traditional societal norms of relationships have to be temporarily redefined.
Wow.
Men and women cannot have a single sexual partner and must have multiple in order to ensure genetic diversity, and healthy women must produce children as often as possible. The losses incurred by human guerrillas are staggering and must be replaced. The aliens, on the other hand, must travel 20 years to bring fresh troops into the fight, and each individual soldier transported over 100 light years of space cost their civilization a small fortune. The first wave of reinforcements cost the aliens as much as the entire economic output of Earth over an entire decade.
Wow.
There is no second wave of reinforcements. The trip is too long, the cost far too great. Even a rescue mission to their forces stranded on Earth would be too expensive and come far too late. What aliens are able to retreat back to their orbiting spacecraft, but most simply surrender to human forces. For Earth, the cost has been staggering, and humanity has gone from a population of almost 8 billion to just over 1 billion. But the war has been won. Earth is free of invaders for the first time in 30 years, and the survivors can once more rebuild their shattered nations. Much as it has many times before, humanity will rise from the ashes, and should the aliens send another invasion force in the future, they'll meet a planet armed with their own advanced technology, reverse-engineered for human use, and determined to remain free. Want to learn about a real alien military encounter? Check.
Man, that was crazy. It's just it's funny because a lot of people would love for aliens to come to Earth, obviously peacefully, just for us to realize that we're not alone in the universe, that, you know, there's potentially a load of civilizations out there like Star Trek, you know, like Star Trek or Star Wars. However, if they were to come with bad intentions, it would just be so bad for us. It would be terrible. It could be the end of us, right? I mean, it would be a scenario that very, very, very few people would want to see. And hopefully it never happens, to be honest. Thanks for watching, guys. If you enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, and keep throwing the recommendations my way. I know I say it all the time, but they genuinely help me out, because if I know you enjoyed watching something, I'll definitely enjoy reacting to it. So like, subscribe, turn on bell notifications, keep throwing the recommendations, and I'll catch you in the next one.